The first week in January is the testing time for New Year's resolutions. Will they sink or swim in the tides of 2021? I'm resolving to read more this year, especially more poetry. A poem a day is my aim. I actually started this before Christmas. I read Caris Walsh's book, Frequencies of God. She took us through Advent with some of the poems of R.S. Thomas. Thomas was a priest whose poetry reflects the beauty and harshness of his beloved Wales. His poems grapple with the absence as much as the presence of God, God's silence as well as God's speech. I was struck by what he says in one of them about the difficulties that we have in discerning what God is saying to us. It's not that God can't or won't communicate, says the poet, but that he doesn't do it to order. Instead, God speaks at times when we're not listening, in ways that we have yet to recognize as speech. Learning God's language calls for patience, a kind of slow reading that we practice whenever we try to hear what a poem is saying. I can skim read my daily newspaper and the minutes of meetings that I've missed, but not poetry. If I really want to hear what the poet is trying to say, then I must learn to slow read rather than skim read. On Christmas Day in the cathedral, we listened to the choir singing carols instead of belting out the more boisterous ones ourselves. During Hark the Herald Angels Sing, I heard a familiar line as if for the first time. Veiled in flesh, the Godhead see, hail the incarnate deity. This is not the vocabulary of a newspaper report, is it? It doesn't describe anything like the words I read on a website before I buy something online. Carols are full of the poetry of the incarnation. And hearing, rather than singing them, gave me time for a kind of slow reading, as I wondered what these words that I've sung 1,000 times are now saying about the Christ-like love of God. According to some neuroscientists, experimental evidence suggests that love is just a matter of chemical activity in the brain. Well, of course, love affects our brains, but surely it's more than brain chemicals. Michelangelo's paintings are not just calcium carbonate. Beethoven's music is much more than sounds. Shakespeare, more than mere words. Like art, love is more than the sum total of its parts. Love has the power to reach into our innermost depths, to move us and stir us and renew us. We might say that love is like poetry, with Jesus as the poem that expresses the Christ-like love of God. We know from our own experience that learning to love takes time. It's more a matter of slow reading than skim reading. A poem a day then, to move my heart and stretch my mind in the coming year. Slow reading poetry alongside the Bible. I hope I can stick to my New Year's resolution. If I do, I have the feeling that I'll be all the better for it in 2021.